Hey, and welcome to the Upstate Roots podcast. This is the second episode. We are here with my co-host, Melissa Cowart.
Hi.
The broker in charge of Gate Realty, and Paul Cuenin, the marketing director for the Greenwood Partnership Alliance. Cool? Yeah?
Yep.
How's everybody doing? What'd you get to drink? We are at Aroma's today, getting coffee. I've got a cortado.
Mine is a breve with the beautiful whipped cream on top.
I got a latte. What's a cortado?
A cortado is like a double shot cappuccino kind of.
Oh, that sounds pretty good.
It's pretty good.
Sounds cooler than a latte.
With cinnamon and agave in it, usually.
Yeah, it's kind of my go-to. It's kind of my go-to.
I'll have to try it. Okay, cool.
It's worth a grab. Missy, you wanted to talk about something real quick?
Yeah, so speaking of aromas, I just wanted to let you guys know while I was getting our coffee, I saw this flyer. It's Coffee for a Cause. So apparently April is the Sexual Assault Awareness Month and Child Abuse Prevention Month. So in order to help raise awareness, for the Beyond Abuse advocacy group that's here in Greenwood, they are going to have, I guess, a table set up, if I'm understanding right, on Tuesday, April the 2nd, from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. here at Aroma's. And each coffee sleeve that you get can also be used as a raffle ticket for a chance to win a coffee lover's gift basket. I don't know what that means. I don't know what's in the basket, but who really cares, because you're helping support a good cause.
Right. What's the date again?
It's April 2nd, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m.
Here at Aroma.
Yep,
Cool.
here at
So
Aroma's.
come out, grab some coffee, help a good cause.
Yep, you're going to be buying coffee anyways. Might as
Yeah,
well
I mean,
help out.
you're getting coffee every day. So anyway, let's get to Paul. Paul, welcome.
yeah.
Glad to have you on.
Thanks.
How did you get to Greenwood?
How did I get to
There's a
Greenwood?
lot of places in the world.
Yeah, I could.
How'd you get here?
So, let's think. I went to Clemson and then kind of bumped around a little bit. Went to Indianapolis, then ended up in Florida.
Okay.
Let's see. We did Indianapolis, Beaufort, then I ended up in Florida. This
love
is kind of
Beaufort.
all during the 2007 economic downturn, and I was a new graduate, so I'm just going wherever I can find a job.
Right.
But then we had our first child, my wife and I, and our family's Brittany's family's in Bristol, Virginia. My family was in Columbia at the time. We said, okay, we want to get back because suddenly our parents want to see us all the time. It's a 10-hour drive. So we looked around. I got a job in Greenville, and I had a friend, Trey Moore, who's a doctor in Abbeville. He had a house for rent in Abbeville, and I ended up renting a house in Abbeville just because it was so inexpensive. I was fine with the commute. And then my wife got a job at Lander, and then we decided we were going to buy. And Greenwood was much more affordable than Greenville.
Yeah.
My wife, we were already at daycares. My wife had a short commute. So we basically bought in Greenwood. And then I've slowly moved job-wise. I was at Irwin Penland in Greenville, moved to East Teak in Donalds. And then Partnership Alliance, I've moved closer and closer to Greenwood to where now I have a mile commute. So it's kind of awesome.
And what is your current position at the Partnership Alliance?
I'm the marketing director.
Okay.
So I'm kind of... I direct myself a lot. So we have some vendors we orchestrate with, but in general, I'm kind of all communications and marketing that the Greenwood Partnership Alliance does.
Gotcha. So is your history in marketing exclusively? Like, have you been the marketing director kind of since you came to the area after Florida, Indiana, et cetera? Or is that, not just with partnership, but just in general, is that kind of the track that you've been on? What did you study and when you left?
Okay, so Clemson, I got a graphic communications degree, which is, it's really print production. It's graphic design and print production. And I graduated with that and went and worked in Indianapolis. I worked at managing a manufacturing floor that printed actually Lowe's, all the interior stuff in Lowe's. They digitally printed on these giant presses. I wasn't crazy about that, so then I went to Beaufort, worked there. I kind of did a lot of different things. I worked at a print shop, I did some web design, I worked at a kayak outfitter, kind of doing whatever I could find within, And then I helped the kayak outfitter with marketing. The print shop did websites too. I was kind of like doing a lot of stuff. And then I got the job. Then I went to Florida, where I did actually pre-press, which is preparing files for print. So that kind of worked with my Clemson degree. And they printed nameplates, which are like permanent labels that go onto equipment. It's kind of a weird niche, but they were ISO certified, and they originally moved down there because they supplied stuff to NASA. So it's kind of a cool company. And then I did their web marketing while I was doing the pre-press because I knew how to do WordPress development.
Right.
And then I got the job at Irwin Penland, which was actually...
It's actually Verizon. I mean,
Right,
it was
right.
kind of one of those, like, you're working for one.
Right. So Irwin Penland, at least at that time, was a major vendor to Verizon's marketing. And Erwin Penland it was the time when like Verizon, there was that time where like every cell phone company was buying every other cell phone company.
Right.
And so Erwin Penland was able to, as the consolidations happened, stay with the company as an advertising supplier. So it was kind of cool for EP because EP was with one of the biggest wireless companies. Once all those consolidations had happened, it was still a vendor for marketing. So what I did was I was a Verizon Wireless. It was a weird kind of double thing. I worked for Verizon Wireless. I had a Verizon Wireless computer. And when I say Verizon Wireless, I mean the corporate headquarters in Basking Ridge. And then I was at Erwin Penland, and I helped them get the screens from app developers, so like an Angry Birds or Plants and Zombies.
Yeah.
And then I would send it to the agency, which could be Erwin Penland in Greenville, or it could be like McGarry Bowen, like a big agency in New York, and they would place it into either TV ads, web ads, or print ads. Then I would route that back to those developers all over the world. They would say, okay, that looks right. It's the right screen. We approve of the usage, and then that would go through marketing.
Gotcha.
So it's one of those things you don't even think about with advertising, but they need to make sure no one's angry about how you're presenting their product.
Yeah.
Right, absolutely. You have 2 degrees.
I do.
Why?
So
What was the second one for?
partially, I can get bored easily, so I like going to school because it provides me one. I like constantly learning, and then I was about 5 years out of Clemson. I was sort of like, do I want to do an MBA? I want to figure out something, increase my earning potential, do something challenging. I looked at MBAs. I actually looked at the Clemson MBA when I was here, and this is about when I lived in Abbeville for about 2 years. And then I started looking at satisfaction for jobs, and computer information systems, soft computer science, has some of the highest satisfaction and pay.
Yeah.
So
Super needed right now.
Right. It's like the demand numbers are crazy as far as in the next 10 years, they're going to need like 100% more.
And you see a lot of that in schools right now, where there's a lot of schools that are pushing for coding and that kind of technical computer understanding from a very young age, which I think is great.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And I helped coach First Lego League Junior, which is kind of related to that. It's great. Kids love it, and kids are more receptive sometimes. Sometimes adults are like, oh, I can't do that, and they just shut off.
A little plug for that. Isn't he doing the robotic stuff right
Yeah,
now?
we'll get to that a little later.
Oh, okay.
A little later.
Oh,
Calm down.
Gotta go in order.
You're ahead of us. It's okay. What? So you went back and got that degree to kind of further your own usefulness.
So I met with some of the Lander staff, and they kind of they laid out how I could do it part time. It was during the day, but at that point I was able to talk to my boss, and they were able to let me flex work and cover, because I was covering all with my Verizon/EP job. I was covering basically all the way out to the West Coast, so I was sometimes working late anyways. So I could kind of flex work, and as long as I was checking my email by like 8 o'clock or whatever, 5 o'clock is in California.
Now, EP, did they start in New York or Greenville? Because they've got offices. Those are their 2 main offices.
They started in Greenville.
Okay.
They have a New York office. They did have a Detroit office for a little bit. Like how it works with agencies a lot is they have their home office, and then they want small operations where there's a lot of business that they specialize in.
And Detroit would make sense for like
they're trying to get in with GM and stuff. So they kind of had a Detroit office. I don't know if they still do, but that was the idea, was to position themselves. So car advertising is a lot of money, so they were trying to position themselves to possibly. And I think they did some GM advertising when I was there.
Gotcha.
And I think.
Those companies are pretty slow to shift too. They don't really like a whole lot of change. They kind of stick with the formula that's worked for the last.
You've watched Mad Men, right? Have you watched Mad Men?
I've watched some of Mad Men.
You should watch it all.
I should.
It's interesting. The way it works, the accounts, is true. It's sort of like you kind of get in, if GM's like, hey, we need someone to draw designer coupons, they'd be like, sure, I'll design coupons. Because you want to get in and start talking to people, and then you slowly climb that ladder when the other guys are failing at there, or not providing exactly. And at some point, hopefully you'll become one of the lead agencies. Yeah. It's all kind of a race, but it's an interesting thing because they're super slow to change. And sometimes they'll have a new CEO and he decides he just wants to fire the chief marketing officer, and they suddenly go out and they're like, we're reevaluating all our accounts.
Right.
And you can win on that or you can lose, but it's an interesting dynamic.
Absolutely.
Kind of crazy.
So when did you become aware of the Partnership Alliance? I know that you were in Donald's at the East Heat Company.
Right.
They're Donald's.
Yeah, they're in Donald's, yeah.
So that's close by. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of a different marketing for a company.
Right.
And then marketing for an alliance. That's kind of, I guess before we get into that, what does the alliance do?
Okay, so Greenwood Partnership Alliance is economic development for Greenwood County.
Right.
So what economic development is we recruit businesses or help local businesses grow. In addition, we help try and improve quality of life and education. So we're kind of, you could be economic development where it's only businesses, but we have some other missions where kind of the Greenwood Promise comes out of that education, and then quality of life. Our foundation is funded, the plan, help fund the plans for Uptown. So we kind of are trying to make it a community building. So that's what the Greenwood Partnership Alliance
So
is.
how did you become aware of them, and then how did you kind of find your fit as marketing director in that? Because it's a little bit of a bridge there.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
It's not the same.
No, it's kind of, that's, so how did I become aware of it? I knew Heather Jones, our CEO. I knew her from actually the gym. We both went to CrossFit, and I met Heather that way. And then I sort of had been following them just because I was especially I remember the first memory I have is when Tajan announced.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which Tajan carbon fiber, and they're
Right.
building a plant kind of out near Fuji.
Right.
But being like, hey, carbon fiber in Greenwood, I'm a car guy, so I was
Gotcha.
like, cool, carbon fiber, like that was pretty exciting. And then that is when I started paying more attention to Partnership Alliance, and then I saw this job listing, and really economic development is really, I like it because it's kind of like pro business to a certain extent. You're helping businesses,
Yeah.
but then it's community building, so you're helping your community. It's a nice kind of like, you don't feel like you feel like you're helping people on both sides. So it's a lot of good fuzzy feelings.
And I've got a question. What are some of the corporations or establishments that you guys take a lot of pride in, saying, hey, we helped recruit and get growth here in Greenwood? Like, do you have
Yeah.
like some places that you can give for examples of?
So the most recent one's Caterpillar, kind of.
Yeah.
That's been the most. So we had a foundry up towards Hodges.
Yeah.
That had been unoccupied for probably, I think, like quite a few years.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say a number of years because I'll probably be off.
Right.
But unoccupied, empty building. We had an inquiry from a company that wanted to know about it. This is how
Yeah.
they all come in. They come up with code names. This one had code name Horseshoe. So it's
Yeah.
like, we have Project Horseshoe. They're interested in this building. They're an existing company, multinational. That's kind of all we know about them. And then they ask us a bunch of questions.
Gotcha.
What's your labor force? What's the cost of the building? What's the cost of energy? How many hurricanes do you have? They have like millions of questions because they're
Right.
trying to basically, they're kind of like a real estate person
Yeah.
in a larger, since they're going to have a lot of people's jobs depend on
Yeah.
making sure the
Right.
house is right. They're more stressed about it. And so we kind of answered all their questions. We helped. They were moving really fast. We didn't know who they were.
Yeah.
And then finally there's a point where they're like, okay, we're going to come meet with you. And that's when we actually met someone, and they're like, hey, this is who we are. Still at this point, it's secret because we don't really tell anyone what's happening until we put out that press release and it's publicly announced.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So it's Project Horseshoe.
Do
And
they have NDAs, or is that?
yeah, they have like NDAs that are like scary.
Ironclad.
Yeah. If you read the NDA, you're like, I will never tell
We
anybody.
will hire
anything.
someone to find
Because
you.
we have NDAs.
Yeah.
Partnership
Right.
Alliance has broad NDAs that everybody signs.
Right.
And those are pretty good, but some of these corporate NDAs are like, it's
Scary.
Okay.
yeah. Well, they're big corporations. Their
Right.
legal department could take care of stuff if they need to. So we were able to kind of get them all the answers, make an argument for Greenwood's workforce. We have a lot of metal worker. We have the commute. I'm always looking at, basically you draw bubbles around places where it's like 45 minutes outside of X location. How many people are there? What's their ages? What's their education? What industries they are work in?
Yeah.
And then you can make the argument that there's people who might be driving by that Hodges plant on their way to Greenville doing
Yeah.
metal work that live in Greenwood, and you could just hire them, and it's easy. And right now, the biggest concern of everyone is unemployment. In sort of we love that the unemployment's low in Greenwood,
Yeah.
but it's actually a detriment because unemployment gets low enough. They're like, everybody's already hired. We can't
Right.
hire anyone. They see it as like
Yeah, I got
it's kind of like property values getting too
Right.
high.
Yeah. Yep.
It's suddenly like they actually, to a certain extent, part of Greenwood's draw, at least like 4 or 5 years ago, was we had higher unemployment. So they
Yeah.
were like, we'll show up and people will flock to us for jobs. But still, I think Caterpillar had like 300 or 400 people apply.
Yeah.
And they hired about 85.
Yeah.
So they had the unemployment number doesn't necessarily, people are maybe underemployed or would like
Right.
to look at different options.
Right.
So we helped them through. They've gotten that facilities online. We got a tour. It's awesome. And a lot of their leadership is living in Greenwood.
Yeah.
So it's cool. They're contributing to our tax base. They seem to love Greenwood. It seems like a good fit. We love having that brand in the county, because to be able to say, hey, we've got Ascend Performance Materials, we've got Fujifilm, we've got Caterpillar, we've got Colgate Palmolive. When you say those big corporations,
Yeah.
people are like, oh, it's sort of like anything else. They feel more comfortable.
Right.
Just like if you were looking at an ad agency and the ad agency had like, we've done Nike,
Yeah.
Mac, and something else, you'd be like, oh wow, this is a real agency.
Yeah.
If the county can say we have these big brands, suddenly that county is much more legitimate.
So why is it that Greenwood County is so attractive to big companies like that, especially industrial companies? Because it's not companies that are big artistic powerhouses. It's manufacturing,
Right.
It's textiles. I know that there's some history here to this area being
Right.
friendly to that, but why now? Why Greenwood County?
So South Carolina in general is pro-manufacturing, right? We're a manufacturing state. We make things. We've got BMW, you've got Volvo, you've got Mercedes, you've got Boeing, and you've got Ascend, and you've got Fuji, and you've got what Greenwood has.
Right.
So overall, what happens is these companies are like, hey, we want to locate a new operation. They kind of look at the whole country. Usually they're either international looking in the U.S. or they're U.S. looking in the U.S. And then they narrow it down to who does a lot of manufacturing, who's kind of got a good positive work environment, not too high of a tax structure, low cost of living. And so what Greenwood's niche is, and then there's kind of what you're talking about, like you're saying that we're not necessarily like video game design headquarters.
Silicon Valley.
Yeah, there's a term, it's called clustering is what they call it.
Gotcha.
So clustering is when companies start grouping around each other. And what clustering leads to is like the Silicon Valley, but it also leads to the Greenwood effect, where there's a definite clustering of international automotive in the upstate.
Right.
And then there's definitely a clustering of software developers in Silicon Valley. And it just keeps building momentum, because if somebody wants to set up and hire more software developers, they're going to Silicon Valley. But if somebody wants to set up and do automotive, they're coming to the upstate.
Right.
Yeah.
Greenwood specifically has a lot of metalworking. And you can do numbers where you see what sectors everybody works in. So we've got metalworking clustering. Then we have our textile, which works into, they said that this is it's kind of mythology, but I think there's truth to it, that when they decided to bring BMW here, they looked at the skills transferability of mill workers to assembly teams, and they're very close.
Yeah.
So you were going to have to teach them some new skills, but they knew like 85% of what they had to know to make a BMW because they had worked in the mills. And we have similar stuff, but then if you think about it, Tajin, they're making fibers. Ascend Performance Materials making fibers. So we're still making fiber. Like it's different now. We're making carbon fiber. We're not making cotton.
Right.
But there's some similarities with that. And then the metalworking is just, we have a lot of metalworking. We have Mac. We have Caterpillar. We have Monty. We have Eaton.
Yeah.
Those are all metalworking. They create different products, but inherently they're machining stuff and they're cutting stuff and they're bending stuff and welding stuff. And welders are really hard to find, but we have like some crazy, like I think 100% more welders per capita than the average America.
Right.
And then we have a lot more chemical engineers per capita, like 150% more.
Wow.
Because you've got Fujifilm, you've got Ascend, they all need chemical engineers.
Yeah.
So that clustering happens, and then when someone's like, oh, I need to find some place to do metal work and I need engineering staff, we can make the argument that, hey, there's a lot of engineers within 45 minutes, we've got the metal workers, we've got more welders than any place else, and our cost of living's low.
Yeah.
And we're excited to have you. Like, we're happy to have you, which is a big part of it. You kind of saw it with Amazon HQ too.
Yeah.
You got to be receptive. It's very much like any other business relationship.
That was a big loss.
Yeah, you got to make sure you show the love and
Right.
that they feel comfortable, or it can go sour.
So if there was a company, and this, before we shift gears into another kind of topic, if there's a company that wanted to come to the Greenwood area, do they have to be this mega corporation, or do you guys deal with just kind of businesses of any size that may look, or do you have like a certain kind of line that you look to see?
So we will help anyone. Anyone contacts us, we try and help them. We've had people come to us and say, hey, I've got this piece of, like, usually they come to us and say, hey, I've got this thing, I think your customers might be interested in. We'll talk to them, we'll see what they're doing.
Right.
Company location-wise, for them to get certain tax benefits, like South Carolina has really high property tax on manufacturing compared to the rest of the country.
Yeah.
And so they always have to provide an incentive for manufacturing, because they need to basically lower it to match other states.
Gotcha.
That's part of this like handouts that everybody talks about. It's basically incentives to get our property tax to match other areas, so we're on a level playing field.
Switching real quick,
Yeah.
what's the foundation for a greater Greenwood County, and how do they interact with the Alliance? Because I know that if you go to your guys' website, it's a separate thing.
Right.
So is the Alliance nonprofit? Is the foundation nonprofit? How do they work together? Do they work together?
So the Alliance is a 501c. Like, we're a nonprofit, but we're not the same kind of nonprofit.
Right. Because you're more governmental.
Right. We're funded
Related.
by public entities and
Right.
private entities.
Right.
With the focus on Greenwood County economic development.
Cool.
Then the foundation is kind of under our umbrella. The foundation is what helps start the Greenwood Promise.
Yeah.
And then the foundation also has annual grants they give out for community development. Okay. So community indicators, they're helping them build a new website and collect some information. They're doing stuff about basically recreational activities for the community. And then city plans, things like that. So it's a funding resource that we have, so we can do that community development, educational development. Because we didn't that's the vehicle to help with that.
Awesome. You've kind of touched on this already, but as specifically as the marketing director, what is your function, and how does industrial site marketing work for economic development? So how do you get people to, like, how do you go out and reach out and draw them in? So
here's the kind of, I guess, metaphor I use. So you need to think we're kind of like, think of an individual going to look for a job.
Yeah.
Right? So we're going to find jobs for Greenwood. And I make sure the LinkedIn, don't need to touch the mic.
Please don't touch the mic.
I make sure the LinkedIn, the resume, the Facebook, social media, all looks right. So when you apply for the job, you're gonna get it.
Yeah.
James, who works in our office as our business development, he fills out the applications.
Yeah.
He answers every question. He does social security information. He basically is filling out all the information. Heather, our CEO, is going to the job fairs, if you will, and talking to people. So no one's going to come to you unless you have either land to develop or a building to buy.
Right.
And so we're pretty rural. So we don't have a lot of buildings. And partially a blessing. It's sort of a blessing and a curse. We don't have many buildings because the economy's, we've sold all the buildings in general. We have a few. If somebody needs to talk, we can talk.
Yeah.
We have some, but they're not what we would call Class A buildings.
Okay.
So what we do a lot is marketing the sites. And with the site marketing, it's a lot like if you were selling home sites for people to build on. We provide them with a concept. We tell them everything that's there. We tell them the benefits of the community. We have renderings. So that's where the site, I didn't realize this until I kind of started working in it, is those sites are really the key.
Yeah.
And once you get them to talk about the site, then you can tell the story. There's kind of the first step is, do you have enough dirt for me? I need 500 acres. Right. I need these utilities. And if you answer those questions, yes, then it's kind of like dating or any other.
Yeah.
Then they want to talk to you a little bit more. You answer more questions. Then at some point they're going to come do a site visit. They're going to fly in and they're going to walk around. They're going to ride gators around, look at everything, talk about cost to flatten it. They know their building shape. Sometimes we have no idea. Sometimes we can guess.
Right.
And they know what they need to do, and they kind of start doing the math. Mm-hmm. And then if you get to that point, usually site visits is like 3 to 5 sites, and it can be nationally, it can be statewide. Then there's a certain point, once you're down to 3 sites, then they start talking some of the incentives.
Yeah.
And whether it's state incentives like Piedmont Tech will train up their workforce, no cost, or it's local incentives like property tax abatement. We talk then, and then hopefully at some point, they put a ring on it and we move on.
You get married.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Okay, shifting again.
Yeah.
We recently had the Imagine Steam Festival that Missy mentioned earlier.
Yeah. I love those videos you guys did. That was awesome.
I appreciate that. Those were super fun. We got that 360 camera recently and have been putting it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. I love especially at the festival because there's so much to look at. It's cool.
That was the whole idea, is like take it there, give a chance.
And I like the look on people's faces. They're like, what's this guy doing?
Well, and I want to point out, we were late to the festival. I know that there was a lot of people there, and so when you watch the video, it's not very busy. But
it's not as busy. No, from 10 to 11:45, it was pretty crazy. We think we had between 250. Let me think. 2,500 to 3,000 in attendance, and that was the inaugural. So that's first year. So it was great.
Awesome. And you founded that, or you had your hand in founding?
We kind of had 4 people. We had Matt Wiggins, who does regional workforce development. So he's kind of covers the Piedmont Tech area.
Yeah.
Then we had Alice Gilchrist. She's with South Carolina STEMS Initiative. She helps educate STEMS, but she lives in Greenwood and she was awesome. Yeah. Sylvia Martin, who is programming at the Art Center, and then myself.
Okay.
And so that team of 4, we went to, they have Imagine Upstate, which is in Greenville, which is bigger than what we did. But we were like, can we try and do this in Greenwood?
Yeah, let's bring it down.
And Sylvia had a STEAM Family Fun Day. And that was really kind of a few hour day in the spring at the art center.
Yeah.
She did all the programming, she did all the activities. Sylvia's awesome. She did a lot of stuff, but much smaller scale.
Yeah.
And so we were trying to kind of grow that, and that's why the art center was the main sponsor.
Yeah.
Because the art center was the anchor. Sylvia was doing a lot of work. So yeah, I can't say take credit for doing it all, but I helped out with all the social media marketing, and we were
You're a
able to
big
get the
part of
word
it.
out. And we had 50 exhibitors,
Yeah.
about 3,000 people.
It was awesome.
When it started, you could tell they're kind of like, is anybody, what is this? What's happening? But I think now people seeing is believing, and I think next year is going to be even better.
Next year should
I'm
be
sure it
huge.
will be.
Yeah.
My
Not a
little
big
girls
amount.
loved it. We caught the back end.
Yeah,
of
when
it,
you
and
see
I'm
the
so
kids
disappointed.
and how excited they are to do all
Yep.
those
Yep.
things and learn about things, then then it clicks, and you're like,
Right.
oh, I get why companies want to do this. I get why people want to be here.
Yeah, exactly.
You coach a robotics team.
yeah.
Yeah.
Misty, do you want
No, that was the thing I heard him say earlier that I was
to?
really wanting to
he
jump
does
on.
it's called Start, right? Or what's
First
the
is what you're
first?
thinking of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's First Lego League is what it's called.
Right.
And so I coached First Lego League Junior, which
Yeah.
is sort of the Cub Scouts of it, if you will. It's the 6 to 10 year olds.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really cool because the art center's behind that too. Sylvia, I helped. We had an interest meeting.
Yeah.
I guess that was about a year ago now, where we said, hey, we're thinking about starting robotics. It's Due West Robotics. Charles
Right.
Angel with Due West.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they've been
and
gone for a
you
while.
did the video with him, which that was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Charles, we were talking to him, and he was like, oh, you guys should start this. You can totally do it, which is a little intimidating. And when I was like, okay, well, let's have an interest meeting. We'll have people sign. We'll see if anybody wants to do this.
Yeah.
Because I want to do it, but sometimes stuff in Greenwood, you don't know what
Right.
the actual... We had a meeting at the art center. We had like 100 plus people show
Oh,
up.
wow.
Wow, that's awesome.
People-
So
It
this
was-
was your first year?
Yeah,
Past year?
this was the first year. So then we basically, Eaton gave a grant to the art center, thank you, Eaton, and funded FLL, which is the 10 to 14-year-old group. They had two
Yeah.
teams. And then FLL Junior, we had two teams.
Awesome.
And so I coached the FLL Junior. And kids love it.
Yeah.
Those kids are smarter than they probably should be. And they are high energy. And man, my son Eustace, who was one of the kids, we were driving home and I was like, yeah, that was pretty fun, wasn't it? He's like, no, Dad, it was awesome.
It was awesome.
It was awesome.
That's awesome.
I know our daughter was involved with it in Due West,
Mm-hmm.
and she would come home. They give the little package, and she'd be gone, disappeared in her room
Yeah.
for hours, building, and
It's amazing how interested they are.
it is inspired. It inspired so much imagination and growth.
Well, I
with
think
her.
the confidence that kids learn to present, and they learn to problem solve, and they learn to work together. I think you don't get those small group dynamics
Yeah.
as much
Right.
sometimes. So it's awesome. Yeah,
It's super good.
I got a question.
Okay, real quick, because we got 2 minutes.
Where can people find out about it if they want to join next year, or when is the
So
joining time? And
yeah,
stuff like that?
the Facebook group Greenwood Tech, GWD
Okay.
We'll throw a link
TECH. Yeah, that's also a thing I organized. That Greenwood Tech kind of spurred the STEAM Festival and the robotics.
Awesome.
Because I did that as sort of I'm a geek. I like meeting with other geeks.
Yeah.
And so we did Greenwood Tech, and the kids' robotics is just what we got so much of a response to, so we
Yeah.
worked on that. But we're open to kind of other stuff, so yeah, Greenwood Tech.
Awesome,
Great.
very cool. Before we go, we've asked this question on our first episode, so I guess we'll keep it going. Any food, leisure, activity places around here that people need to know about?
Food leisure. So Kickers.
Kickers.
Whenever
Yeah.
people come, we always say Kickers. Like that's like
Kickers is
I feel
killer.
like Partnership Alliance. We're downtown, right? We're
Yeah.
downtown. So we are like regulars at Kickers.
Right.
Leisure. I feel like people miss out on the National Forest and,
Yeah.
and Lake Greenwood. Like
Lake
we really
Greenwood,
have.
yeah.
There's blue trails. There's biking. There's hiking. People just
Yep.
don't. You need to look at the state parks we have around here. They're great resources. You need
Absolutely.
to go to that. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think we've covered it pretty well. I appreciate you coming on the show
Cool.
and talking with us. Again, I'm David. This is Melissa, and this is Paul Cuenin. Yeah, real quick. We got a minute.
So I know that we talked a lot about the Greenwood Promise. I've already spoke with Katie Davenport. Is
Correct,
that correct?
yeah.
And so I just wanted to tell everybody if you have any interest in learning more about it, a couple episodes from now we will be trying to get
Yep.
Katie on here, and we'll have if you want to shoot us some questions that you would like to know about it so we can direct it, Katie, please do. Just email our Facebook page or whatnot,
Yep,
and make sure
absolutely.
we can ask those questions.
Yeah. Thanks a lot,
Cool.
and thanks for watching.